Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar organized by the International Association on Hydrological Sciences and the Committee of Oceania Geospatial. Our subject today is governance in water resources, how to speak to decision makers on water resources with GIS and citizen sciences. So if you could please introduce yourself in the chat, your name, your role, your country, so we know where you're coming from. Our working group is animated by myself. So I'm Pearl Winchester, and I'm originally from New Caledonia. And I'm co-animating this working group with Nicolas. Nicolas, please, if you can just give us a few words.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name's Nick. I'm supporting Pearl and working with Chris and Pearl in this IAHS and Oceania working group for water resources. I'm currently supporting the Earth and Ocean Observation team in SPC, and my background is in hydrology. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for sharing today.
Thanks, Nicolas. We are also helped by Chris, who is based in Japan and is working as an hydrogeologist at the Research Institute for Humanity and Nature, but I'm not sure Chris will be able to connect today. I am very proud to introduce our two speakers for today, which are Séverine Bois from New Zealand and François Tron from New Caledonia. Séverine, please, if you can just give us a few words.
Yeah, so good morning, kia ora, kutu. I am Séverine Bois. I am a human geographer at Lincoln University in the south of New Zealand, and I have been working in New Caledonia with Pearl and also a little bit with François. When I have been working in a small research local institute in New Caledonia, and I have been working on freshwater management since 2014, mostly on social dimensions and mostly with Pearl on this topic there. So yeah, just that's it.
Thank you, Séverine. François?
Good morning, everyone. Malo, kia ora and bula. So I am François Tron. I am an agronomist by training and conservationist for 25 years or so in various geographies around the globe, and for 18 years now, 20 years in New Caledonia. A lot on field projects with local communities and various stakeholders, all the way to countrywide dimensions, including as country program director for Conservation International, currently working with SPREP for ecosystem-based adaptation regional Kiwa Payback Plus project. Thank you.
All right. I'm facing some problems. I have some emails telling me that they couldn't get online. So I'm trying to fix this at the same time. But I'm just going to continue with this. And yes, so just a quick reminder about the working group. So we started with the Committee of Oceania Geospatial Water Resource Working Group, and now we are the International Association on Hydrological Sciences, Pacific Island Countries and Territories Working Group. And so our aim, if it's working, yes, is to share information and knowledge for the benefit of our Pacific Islands around geospatial water resources, and especially for the islands of Oceania. And we do want to build bridges between the Pacific Islands around geospatial and water resources. Our main topics, as you see, we have the full cycle of water. And actually our topics that we work on are everything except the ocean. So we do tend to stay focused on the continental water more. And it also includes groundwater and hydrogeology. All right, I'm going to leave the floor to Séverine. So Séverine, I stop sharing my screen and it's up to you. And
yeah.
I'm going to try to see what's going wrong with the link.
I hope we will fix it. So just to share my screen, if that's okay. Yes or not? Yes, great, awesome. So yes, so today I will make a presentation more about the social dimension of GIS and mapping tools, and how we can try to implement participatory mapping and GIS, participatory GIS in the Pacific, in Oceania, and I will share with you some insights and reflections based on work that have been done in New Caledonia. So just to start, just everything again. Okay. So just as you know, freshwater management is facing both local and global challenges around the increase of complexities. Today it's not just environmental issues around climate change, but also you are facing, and you know that, important data gaps, and I think that is a kind of very important problem in New Caledonia, some fragmented governance issues. And I think broadly in the world, everywhere, we've got this kind of global mistrust in the face of regarding science and evidence-based policies or decisions. And so in this process, GIS and maps have been traditionally used for data analysis, and they are very, very good tools for spatial visualization. But with this high uncertainty, with this increase of complexity and the diffusion of many stakeholders conflicts, it is more and more difficult to try to implement legitimate decision. And we are facing another important issue, is that it is definitely very difficult to communicate on scientific knowledge. And another new challenge is around the difficulty to integrate citizen contribution. So today we've got this kind of gap between all the data we've got, GIS, science, and policy decision. And in this perspective, I think water governance won't be just a technical issue to solve, but also a governance challenge. So I just propose today to try together to shift, to make a shift in paradigm, and to try to go from a data-driven decision to a more participatory and process-based governance. The main question finally will be how we can just arrange science, also power, and a great diversity of representation of water to make the best decision. Because we are in the Pacific, we are in Oceania, and we've got this great diversity of water representation. So we will have, I think, three main questions. The first one will be, what are the knowledge that are used? We should have always in mind that if you take a decision on water management and water governance, they will have some real impacts that will change probably the life of people. And there are some important stakes around to how we can create a more inclusive governance with local people and indigenous people who can have a different representation of water. So we will have to have always in mind who is participating, who contributes, and how. And in this context, I know that so many scientists, and you are part of them, have created such amazing and good GIS tools, but they are most often just created and imagined and designed by very good experts, and by this process, they can hold this kind of technocratic point of view on water, and sometimes maybe it does not fit totally with local knowledge and local representation. Finally, this kind of GIS can create some bias in the decision that can exclude some local knowledge and stakes. So, and even if these GIS tools are shared and are in open access, that's great. I think it's a very important step. But access to information can be different from, and it is different from, control over decision making. So I think it's not new, but many researchers, I don't know if you've heard about Catherine Daniel from the INU, for example, in Oceania. Many people and many researchers think about how we can just use and develop GIS and mapping tools as a mediation tool in participatory modeling. In fact, participatory modeling will integrate different kinds of stakeholders, local ones, farmers, and also experts and decision makers. The idea won't be just to develop the map, but also to produce a shared representation. And it could be map, it could be GIS, and after that, when you are trying to build a collective decision, you can also work on scenarios. And so the function of the maps and GIS will be to integrate both scientific and local knowledge and to support a collective understanding, not only the most comprehensive representation of the water ecosystem. And this will probably improve the legitimacy of decision. So in this perspective, GIS will become what we call boundary object, which will link science and governance. And GIS won't, in this aspect, they are not neutral, but they will reflect many choices and some assumptions, and lately some perspectives. So how do you do that? I know I won't make you I won't share a full toolbox, but you can find so many publications. You can organize some participatory workshop, and you will have to pay attention to who is participating, and you can progressively organize first workshop with some kind of stakeholders, and after that some others, etc. You can work on collaborative maps. You can work also when it is too complicated also, and to create a better understanding of the water ecosystem, you can work with role-playing games that will be based on a map, for example, of the water ecosystem, of the catchment, for example, etc. And after that, when you want really to engage in decision, you can also implement some multi-agent system based on GIS if you want to go through a very more sorry. And so finally, the outcome will be that the outcome would be the map or the GIS platform. It will be that stakeholders will become proficient in using these tools, and they will become finally producers of the decision. So in this perspective, decision, this is not the end of the process. This is not just a vote. It's a whole process with iterative, and this is a process that is each time that is imperfect. And the GIS and the data won't decide don't decide for actors. It will be a support for negotiation and decision. So GIS and your everyday tools are just tools for mediation and the place for creating shared representation and tools for empowerment. So now I will just turn to New Caledonia and to more Pacific insight. As I said in my introduction, we've got some very specific relation to water in the Pacific. We've got very what we call in social science relational ontologies. That is to say, in the Pacific, most often local people and indigenous people have for them water is a kind of link. And I will share with you some results from New Caledonia to unpack water representation in the Pacific. And after that, I will just share with you just few results and the important values if you want to process a more inclusive water governance. And it's based on the book you can see on this presentation here. So we made some important research in New Caledonia on water representation and the evolution of water governance on the long term, both on the West Coast, as you can see here, or on the East Coast. So with local researchers such as, for example, Charlene Necliai or Delphine Coulange. And in this, each time we've unpacked this kind of relation to water on the long term, we can see that finally water stories and water landscapes are made of continuities and descriptions in water management on customary land. And finally, waterscapes today are shaped by just pre-colonial displacement, colonial displacement, revolts, missionary colonization, mining damage, land reform, infrastructural violence. And each time, when you are in New Caledonia and when you are just at the bend of a river or when you see a water pipe, you should have probably in mind that this place is made of different layers of events, and in this place have some legacies that intertwine different temporalities, and they are everywhere. So, and finally, yes, you should have this kind in mind, this fact in mind, and probably it could be very important to try to work with local people the way you can probably partly map this kind of event, and to decide with local people if it is important or not to have it on the map. Another important thing about relational ontologies, and to try to unpack that with you, and it can be kind of abstract. So for Kanak, finally, Kanak waters are made up of what we call assemblages and link. That is to say, when people are talking about water, they are making link by association. For example, they are making links between water and eels and shrimps, and it will be synonymous of harmony. It can be a link by circulation, for example, between water holes and clans with some very symbolic fish. It can be links by correspondence between water, taro, and woman, and it will have the meaning of fertility. And you have also many links by filiation that will create some belongings and give some roles of guardian of water. And finally, the values that are attributed to water are determined by how water is included in these assemblages. Assemblages between land, clans, people, events, eels, black mullets, etc., etc. And you've got this kind of relational ontology. And finally, what is happening today? Today, people are just tinkering with these traditional relational ontologies, but also with more Western and Occidental representation, and they are creating this kind of new representation of water. So as technicians and experts, you will probably have to deal with this kind of diversity. So how we can manage to integrate that into governance? You will have to work at different levels. With Pearl, for example, we've tried to implement this kind of thing with a bunch of researchers from the mixed research unit from GEO. We have organized some training on dialogues and participation during the shared water policy. And locally, we've tried to develop work around maps on Loyalty Islands, for example, but also on a dam project in Point Bout. So yeah, different kind of tools, and you could find some publications and more detailed presentation in some publication. So just maybe to finish, I think I just running out of time. So just to share with you some just more world global view, but yeah, we've made also a work. We try to make a comparison between New Caledonia, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and Bolivia, and to look how these big countries try to take indigenousness into account in water governance, because they've got so many similar issues with New Caledonia and many countries in the Pacific. That is to say, for example, in New Caledonia, they have good practitioners' knowledge of the context, of the Maori context and the Maori links to water. They've tried to implement some local legal innovation. In Australia, they are facing also very similar issues with a great heterogeneity of indigenous communities. In Canada, they are facing the mining pressure that is very important in New Caledonia, but also in Fiji, it could be, and as well in Papua New Guinea. And also in Bolivia, it can be interesting to look at what they've done, because they've got this kind of thing that is very important, I think, everywhere in the Pacific, is that indigenous people are truly engaged and involved in the political life of the country. So just based on this big work in bibliography and our experience in New Caledonia, we finally propose 3-4 structuring factors inspired by Jackson and Al. First, you will have to work on norms and values, mostly the different standards, the different values, and the different representation of water. And so to do that, social science can make great contribution. You will have to work on governance mechanism, and probably from the local level to the global level or the national level. And each time to think about how you will pay attention to the place of indigenous people. You will have to work also in more on the institutional framework to make decision in a very coherent institutional framework, and you will have to face this very important issue of pluralism and maybe to create legal hybridity. And finally, you will have to co-build this kind of spatial tools I told about at the beginning of my presentation. Maybe I can just skip this this slide. It's not that important, but GIS can be very important just to share data and to try to share different representation. GIS can be, when you co-build GIS, it will be important to think that and consider indigenous people as an entire entity. And finally, when you are working on GIS and maps, you can also integrate some very interesting and work on cultural indicators and the way you can map them. And it can be also a good way to integrate local representations. So just two tips and best practices to conclude. Best practice 1, it will be just try to co-design GIS with stakeholders. So it will be based on the co-definitions of the indicators and the knowledge you will integrate. It will improve probably, for sure, it will improve the ownership, the legitimacy, and the trust that is missing today, I think, in many places. The best practice 2 would be to use GIS as a shared decision support tool and not just the final outcome of your work. So it will be an iterative process. And first tip would be try to avoid the black box GIS. I know it's very, very complicated, but try to keep it simple when you are working with local stakeholders. And finally, always think your GIS as a whole part, as a part of the whole governance process, and try to create relationship with social scientists, such as Pearl do that quite well, and also with jurists, and yeah, you will have to create a kind of a social ecosystem to work together on this objective, because it's quite challenging to work at these different scales of decision and trying to make it happen in terms of the best decision. So just I conclude. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Séverine. I think it's actually pretty clear, and I really like your last sentence here. Data must lead to decisions, not just visualization. Yeah. It's really how to get it to everywhere. So yes, thank you, Séverine. Do any of you have any questions for Séverine? If so, you can open your microphone and directly ask your question, or if you don't want to talk, then you can type it in the chat. So I'm leaving, yeah, if you have any questions. Nicolas?
Yes, thank you very much, Séverine, for that presentation, and I appreciated the flowcharts and the visuals as well. Forgive me if you already kind of explained this at the beginning, Séverine, but can you just elaborate a bit more on, like, is this part of like a postdoc work you're doing, or a PhD you're doing, or is it part of just a research project you're doing? That's my first question. And then my second question is just around when you're working with communities, sometimes is there information that they don't want to share, like about sacred sites and things like that? And then how does that come into this? Because I think at SPC we are usually about open data principles and open source, but there will be maybe some exceptions to that. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, concerning the project on which maybe I can just stop sharing, it would be better. So yeah, it's all what I presented to you is based on different projects with different research projects, and the most important one was on a project on water governance on customary lands in New Caledonia, and it was research project with human geographers, anthropologists, lawyers and jurists, and so the idea was really just try, because there were no data on Kanak water representation, and finally in New Caledonia, it's pretty recent to have some research on water management and governance, on at least the social aspect, I would say. So, but we had also the presentation is also based on small other research projects, for example, founded by the Pacific Fund and with INU, with Catherine Daniel, and we have tried to experiment some participatory tools in different countries of the Pacific around freshwater management. And I worked in New Caledonia on the specific case study around the building and the social not the social license, but the social agreement around the construction of a dam project in Point Bout. And so and another project, my more recent project with Catherine Sabino on black mullets. And this is a more specific project on this very symbolic fish. And it was really, really interesting just to work on this very specific species, because it tells us so many things on relation between people, fish, and water place. But also it is very interesting to use this fish just to create a kind of citizen participation. That is to say, when you try to specialize where people are able to see black mullet, it can tell you things about, the quality of the water ecosystem. So, for example, it's a very good
indicator.
Social entry to build some trust between managers and local communities. And I think, you're right. For example, it can be, I think in terms of it helps me, it gives me the opportunity to turn to your second question on sacred places. I think, I think it should be a negotiation each time, and it should be an agreement with each community, and you will have to decide if you can share or not this information. But another point could be also to discuss with people, because if they keep it hidden, probably it can create also a weakness in the decision. So I think it's also just try to unpack the power that is around keeping it hidden or not. It could be. I think it's mostly the way you can try to find a solution around this kind of issue. And I think there are also so many new research that are done today on this question of data sovereignty, mostly in New Zealand. I am not very totally, I don't have a very comprehensive overview of the results of this kind of research, but probably research is advancing today on this kind of ethical issues around data sovereignty. So sorry, my answer is not so too complete, probably not so maybe but we have
Thanks.
some insight.
Thank you, Séverine. It helped.
Nicolas?
Thank you, Séverine.
Yes. Does anybody else has another question? If not, I think it's time to leave the floor to François. Let me see. This is working. All right. I'm going to leave the floor to François. So, yes, please, François. Thank you a lot, Séverine, for your presentation.
Thank you, Pearl. Thank you for this very inspiring piece, Séverine, and very happy to connect with the rest of the wider Pacific today. Some people from New Caledonia I see in the chat. So I'm gonna share my screen. I have a presentation that might be a little lengthy in the first slides, telling about the projects that I want to showcase today. So maybe I will go a little fast, including because some of them are in French, to focus on the last 4 or 5 slides, which are really about the topic on how to speak to decision makers in the context of strengthened governance on water.
Thank you, François.
You can hear me well, huh?
Yes, we can hear you well. And
awesome.
Right now we can see the editor mode of your presentation, and
it should come full screen now.
Yeah, it's good. It's
That's
ready
it?
to go.
Excellent. So thank you very much for attending this this talk. I hope it's rather a conversation if I'm fast enough to go to the key points. But basically, I want to showcase here the Kiwa Initiative project funded with SPREP, the South Pacific Regional Environment Program, which is the Pacific Ecosystem-Based Adaptation to Climate Change. It's a regional project bringing together Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomon Island, Wallis, Futuna, and New Caledonia. So I work on these two latter French territory in the Pacific. And as part of the SPIBAC project, I will specifically discuss about securing water resources in Kwawa, which was one of our activities. And here on the picture, you see maybe 20, 30 people together joining by the river, because water resources comes with nest. It is not only the drinkable water coming from the spring or from the tap, it's also what does the water in the river represent to the local people. Séverine was just talking about the cultural dimension of some species living in the water, but we can also mention about how important it is to bath in the river, either for health or for recreation purposes. And there are also spiritual dimensions associated with some parts of the rivers. So who are the stakeholders, the decision makers we want or we have to speak? Is it the locals, the indigenous leaders? Is it the highest level officials from the jurisdiction? Is it the municipality, the province, the government? Is it the funding agency? Is it the civil servant in the administration acting as intermediary or as a focal point for more regular conversations? There are multiple levels of decision makers, and each of them has his own specifics. So basically, Payback Plus, as I mentioned, is a regional project in New Caledonia. For that particular field demonstration in Kwawa, we had a budget of $25,000 US. It's been doubled because we managed to bring together another 2 donors. And because it's a climate change adaptation, just a few slides on what is the current situation and what shall we expect with climate change and what are nature-based solutions. So nature-based solutions is really about restoring and protecting ecosystems to address societal challenges, including adaptation, but also, as you see on the bottom left, natural disasters, including floodings or droughts, economic development, public health or human health, food security, water security, and of course, conservation, biodiversity conservation. So if we do not address these societal challenges, and if we only address, let's say, endangered species protection, it's not really a nature-based solutions. Climate change, yes, we hear that every day, and we are not so sure how much mitigation efforts will effectively be done. So our future looks more or less dark. But even would we be doing immense mitigation efforts or reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, it wouldn't be like what we have been experiencing in terms of climate. And for now, we are rather going towards the worst case scenario for the future. So who are the decision makers? Most of the time we hear, oh, we should get education for our kids. Yeah, but our kids will be decision makers in 50 years or 30 years, 40 years. Is it our like politicians who are in their 70s or 60s most of the time? Or is it our you and me, maybe age 40 or something, who are preparing everything so that the decision makers effectively engage in this war economy that climate change adaptation is actually requiring? War economy doesn't mean that we're going to fight anyone. War economy just means that if we don't engage significantly, we're going to lose what we have. So who are the decision makers? It's a very important question. So climate change, I won't go deep into these ones, but just to say that on one slide, I managed to bring together all the key information that most of the time talk to most people. I have seen so many presentations from a number of stakeholders with 5 to 10 different slides about climate change, which is very boring. Very fascinating for those that are experts in the area, but really on that one slide, we have the nature-based solutions that allow for ecosystem-based adaptation. And on water, we can highlight here the impact, likely impact of climate change, and on green, what should we do? So basically restoring watershed and forest. And in our case, this is a lot about wildfire, fire, and invasive deer control. So just short slides about risk. When we talk about climate change adaptation, we're talking about managing risks associated with climate change. So as you may know, risk is a three-dimension function: climate events, vulnerability, and exposure of what's really important. So our field demonstration were really designed and implemented to inspire decision makers, to prepare for upscaling. For now, forest restoration or watershed restoration is rather seen and funded in New Caledonia as a nice thing to do, but not that important, if I may say. And the climate change future, it might be a much important thing to do or vital thing to do. So we need to prepare for upscaling, and the cost will be high. So there are a number of attributes of an appropriate field demonstration activities. It's not personal thing, but one thing that is important is really not to mix inclusion in the planning with decision. So I very much appreciate what Séverine mentioned, because most of the time, all this planning phase is a very technocratic dimension, and then comes the time for decision, and then when comes the time for implementation, we face some conflicts or opposition just because local communities have not been properly included in the planning phase, especially if local people are effectively included, including and especially women and youth, we have more likely chances that the decision will be fully supported and the implementation will just go smooth. One important part was to really align on the public policy that was already set for the place. And I should have highlighted here the water policy that we have in New Caledonia for a few years, which has been a very inclusive and extensive consultation process in its planning phase. And we have been addressing with the local people what is the situation and what should be addressed. So including fire and invasive deer, as already mentioned. This planning phase was very intensive, very inclusive. You have some pictures of what it looked like here. And I want to stress out the importance, as you may see on the bottom right, the importance of field visits and top right as well. Field visits going to different places, especially for indigenous people, is important because it connects them to other communities, and sometimes they have personal or family ties with these other communities, and because it raises the profile of your project. Whenever you travel to another place, the official from those places, they might want to host you. The official from your place, they want to go with you because you are together, because you meet others. So these shared learning, for me, is one of the most important things if you want to engage with decision makers indeed. Get that early in your project. So basically, what the Water Authority was saying about water resources in our place was that no change is detectable. If you might understand these charts at a glimpse, you see there's no visible change. But the people from the place, they were very anxious. When we had this mass fish mortality during the project lifetime, they were very anxious, very, very anxious. So it's interesting how indigenous people or local communities have a traditional knowledge of their place, which is not captured by, let's say, modern science. So we've set up a participative water monitoring, so starting from their own way to appreciate water resources quality. We've done agroforestry because water in soil is critical to secure food security, especially subsistence agriculture. So a lot of the work was actually based on regenerative hydrology, how to retain water in the mountain, in the slopes, in the soil, to slow it down, to spread it across the place, to facilitate its infiltration and sequestration into the soil. Agroforestry is very important because it provides shade, it provides organic matter in the soil, and hence reduce the evapotranspiration and build the water in the soil. Fire. Now we come to GIS. We've not done a lot of GIS, I must say, but we've done this amazing work. So we've looked at all fire burnt areas since 2000 all the way to 2023. So 24 years of fire mapping, starting from 300 square meter all the way to a couple of thousands of hectares, as you may see here. And we found that fire in that area, in our study area, which is the left part of the study area, this is our project area, has not caused any forest loss or very little. And half of the savanna were not burned. So basically, we found out that fire is very unlikely to be an issue on water resources. We also found that only a few fires a year are causing 2/3 of the damages. And we also found that in 2011, something changed, because after that, we had half the extent of burnt areas. So very spontaneously, in full autonomy, local communities can effectively transform their behavior and practice on fire by their own. Invasive deer. Here is the second way we used GIS. Mapping where hunters have been going and where they've shot deer. And as you see at the scale of the municipality, which is the tiny red square on the map of New Caledonia, we have removed about 1,000 deer, over 1,000 deer, over 9 months. The whole understory and the soil of the forest is completely sacked by the deer. And this is really where the water issue is from the local people. And as a technical staff, I don't see any other reason really out there. But by the end of the 9 months of the culling campaign, we hardly reduced the abundance of the deer. So we've spent about $200 per hectare in 9 months without reducing the deer numbers. So that means we are not working with the right tools at the right scale, and the cost will be very high. So for that, we need a very strong strategy to speak to decision makers, because we will need tens of millions a year, US dollars. So what did we achieve with decision maker? What did we not achieve with them? So we have doubled our implementing budget, and the project is by its end now. We have initiated a multi-partners longer-term funding, and we created key resources for upscaling, key information, especially on the cost. However, we failed to secure this longer-term funding. We failed assessing the funding needs at scale. Why? That was not the right time for some stakeholders, including the water agency, and some of our partners were not aligned, were not delivering. So now we're really going into the main points of this discussion. Really, it's important to understand that decision makers are all around the place. It's not only the top officials that are the decision makers, but delivering with local communities like indigenous communities, their leaders, the landowner, maybe a civil society organization leader. Delivering with these ones, feet in the mud, might bring satisfaction, and it will also help to scale up the idea. Because these, let's say, intermediary decision makers will speak for yourself. They will bring your idea and project at a higher scale. I'm not so sure about your positions as you listen right now. Maybe some of you are actually these intermediary decision makers. So in this case, please consider that if you build a community of intermediary decision makers, you will have a better capacity together to speak at a higher level of decision making. Make sure you have the right resources and the right support to talk to the top level of decision makers. Otherwise, it might be challenging. Yeah? So now you want to talk to officials, the top. Remember that officials, they have little time. Most of the time, they look for how much will that cost, how many jobs will we create. Maybe there are other questions. And every individual has a specific driver. Every official has also trusted advisors. These trusted advisors may be their official cabinet advisors, but maybe it's their companion in life. Maybe it's their kids. Maybe it's their best friend. Maybe it's a very effective lobbyist in the industry. And these are worth to get to know. If you have to talk to those people, get a bilateral meeting at the earliest during your project. Don't wait the last minute to get it done. Make it at the earliest, and make sure that your focal point in the administration is aware. And if not supportive, make sure that they are aware. And as I mentioned earlier, create events, go to other communities, invite these other communities to your events. The officials will show up. Remember that in the administration, civil servants can be your worst enemies and your best allies. So there are some bullet points here. I won't go into all of that. Really depends where you are. But if you are this, let's say, middle hierarchy civil servant in the administration, please remember that you can be the best allies of this third party. So make sure you manage the way you do things not to be a worst enemy, and make sure you can indeed be a best ally if you want to deliver. And my last slide, congratulations. Now you're set to talk to your official, but you need to get ready. As I briefly pointed earlier, make sure you know them, what drives them. Again, every individual has special drivers. What is their agenda? The official agenda, I mean, right? Is there a law about to be voted? And you're a lawyer, great. Do they have to set up the financial mechanisms to improve the water management? Maybe they need figures. When do they need these figures? Who are these trusted advisors we just talked about? When is the right time to engage with them? And when you meet with them, there are a few important questions. Some of them in here. Most important is really to listen and get prepared. Because if you have 5 minutes and you talk 10 minutes, maybe you won't have time to listen to them. Maybe you cannot be challenged by them. You cannot later reassure them and build trust with them. So practice your speech. 5 minutes goes fast. And most of the time, we don't have much more than that. And I thank you. That was it. I hope it's inspiring, and I wish you a very successful next conversation with your decision makers. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Francois. And as Nicolas just wrote in the chat, yes, both your presentations were really, really inspiring. I learned a lot today. It's almost time, but I wonder if anybody has a question for Francois. It seems like you were too clear, François. No questions for François? Oui, Séverine. Yes, Séverine, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, François. It's not a question, it's more a comment, and I think our two presentations are resonating quite well and are really complementary. And what I like at the end, finally, your conclusion is that the process you reckon that it is clearly an imperfect process and it's a step-by-step process, and the most important thing is to really create relationship with these decision makers and all the civil servants and advisors that are working around them, and try to figure out what are their main drivers. And I really like, this conclusion, because I think it's complementary in the sense that, it's not just tools and the data you will be successful to share, even if it's in a very smart way with very, very beautiful and useful and GIS, you see. And so thank you. Thank you, François.
All right, thank you a lot, Séverine. As we're all almost wrapping up, if you could please just all put your camera up, please, just to say thank you to our speakers, and so we can take a quick picture of all of us. If you can turn on your camera so we can see you. All right. Is it coming up? All right. So I'm just going to do the screenshot. Are you ready? 1, 2, and smile. All right, you're in. I see new people coming in. I'm going to take another one. I can take another one. 1, 2, 3. Angeline, you don't want to be putting up your camera. You're the last one, actually, not being on with the camera. She's shy. All right. Just to wrap up, our next events are, let me see. I'm sharing my screen. Normally you see it. Where is it? Here. Yes, our next event is on September the 2nd. We have another webinar around drinking water networks and GIS. And you also see that there are some international association on hydrological sciences events in July and in September. I just shared information here because some of the capacity development or webinar and podcast will be online. So if you want to stay updated and on groundwater or on water resource management, then just stay connected to IAHS. And also Chris is organizing a capacity development workshop on water resource modeling around 23rd of September. It will be in Fiji. And if you want to have more information or you want to register, then you can actually scan the QR code here. So to make sure that you will have the information once we have the full program. And I'm just going to finish by thanking again everybody for being with us today, and thanking Nicolas and Chris that were connected, my co-animators. And of course, thank you very much to Séverine and to François for being our speakers today and preparing this really great presentation. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Merci bien, Pearl. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Merci
Merci.
beaucoup.
And success.
Bye.
Thank you. Success.
Bye.
Bye bye.